little bit. I know you've flipped and wholesaled 400 houses, and I know offline we talked a little bit about 70 or 75% of those 400 were flips. Like, how did you? I've done well. We got 3 going now, about 273 flips. Okay, and I hate every one of them. Literally, every one of those properties that we've done always has some type of a bloodbath story that goes along with it, whether it's contractors, building inspectors, just everything and anything that can go wrong. And then you went and did more. Like, did you deal with some of the same things, or was it just nice and easy for each one?
No doubt. No, never nice and easy. I will say this. I was fortunate. There's an element of luck in a lot of stuff that we do, right? To have found an amazing contractor up front, to the point to where he's become over years to be one of my best friends. Right. And so trust them implicitly. Now, it wasn't always that way. Even when we started working together, I kind of tell the story about how we were working together, and we would like break up and fight about stuff, and then we'd see other people, and then we get back together eventually or whatever. So, it definitely had lots of ups and downs. And I think it took coming to a level of respect of, he has a business, he has to make money. And I think it's easy for contractors to look at people like us and say, I'm doing all the work and you're making all the money, without the context of, I had to find the leads, I marketed, there was no guarantee that I was even going to get a deal. People that are outside of our business don't typically understand all that goes into it, all the expense that goes into it, all the turmoil, right? So it just kind of took this dance over time of realizing that we could find a way to help each other out. And so I will say, and if you've done that many rehabs, you probably know this too. When you do a rehab here and there, it's hard to be important to the contractor because they have lots of other customers, not just you. And when you run a volume shop, if you get to the point to where I was in for a long time, which is where I'm this guy's only customer and I'm keeping his 3 or 4 teams running all the time, then you start to develop this respect for one another. Like he needs me to be successful because I'm helping him be successful, and vice versa. And it's hard to do that until you have scale. Now, what I tell people that don't have scale yet is like, create a little co-op, like find a couple of your buddies that also do this and give them your business as well. Because then as a group, you're important to that person and they don't have to spend half their time looking for more work because you're keeping them busy. Right. So, but no doubt, I mean, contractors, just working with people, I mean, heck, even hiring people for your own business right now is a challenge. Like finding people that have your best interest in mind, and you can work together over a long period of time and not have to kind of question the relationship after every single deal, is a hard place to get to, but you can get there.
Yeah. One of the things I really want to talk about too is real estate's really popular right now. It just seems like everybody, I don't care what age range they are, they're all like, oh, we got to get on this train, because we're going to miss out if we don't, the FOMO thing. But I think a lot of real estate investors are making some very critical mistakes because they're failing to be educated. They're failing to surround themselves around people like, the members of your mastermind that are actually tried, tested, and have been through failures and possibly recessions. But I think a lot of the people that are jumping in, they're thinking, oh, we're just going to dabble and get in as a hobby. At what point should a real estate investor really start looking at this as a career, as a actual business instead of a hobby? Because if they keep playing in the hobby space while I'm working my W-2 and I'm just going to dabble and flip a couple houses, do a few wholesales, like let's talk about that transition, because I know that this is something that comes up in your mastermind because it comes up in my mastermind a lot, is where do we make that transition? And then when we make the transition to treat this like a business, what's involved in that? I mean, it's bookkeepers and everybody in their mind, the dollars are like going chick, chick, chick. They think, oh, I can't afford that. And to me, having crossed that bridge of where I used to think I couldn't afford that to now where I'm like, I don't know how I ever operated and did and even ran this thing without that. Like, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes back to whatever that person's goal is. If it's just a hobby around, then so be it. Right. I do think as you start to treat it like a business, you start to layer in cost, like you said, and to offset that, you have to set your sight on scale. Like you can't have a team and do one deal here and there. You have to get above, every market's a little bit different, but probably above 2 or 3 deals a month gives you some dry powder in terms of profit, right? To plow back into the business in terms of paying for an admin, maybe paying for more marketing, paying for an acquisitions person, a salesperson. So you have to run it like a real business, because if you don't, you can't hire a salesperson if you do a deal here and there. They're not going to be committed to you if they you're not going to hire the world's best salesperson that, has an opportunity to make 15 grand a year because you do 5 deals a year and he might make 3 grand on it. Right. It's got to be, you have to create an opportunity big enough for those people to feel comfort with that their job is secure. Right. And so it's really the case for scale. What I'll say is I've done a tremendous amount of coaching, hundreds of people over the years. And I never want to tell people like, hey, I would recommend you go quit your job. Like, I don't want to lay in bed at night thinking about that. The truth is the people that I know that have been the most successful that I've coached are the ones that kind of burn the boats, if you will, and they went all in, they committed to it, because you make different decisions. If in the back of your mind, you have a bad month and you're like, well, I'm still getting my check. Like, let me just not market this month. Let me take a little time off or whatever. Those are the folks that never really turn it into a business. And why would they? Right. So you got to be committed at the end of the day, right? If you're not happy where you're at, you can build a path there. Now, irregardless of how hard the market is right now, there's plenty of people making a lot of money right now. And I'm fortunate to be surrounded with a lot of them. It doesn't mean their life is easy. It's hard. Like, to make the kind of money that some of these folks are making, it's not a shocker that you have to do hard things. Like, if you wanted easy, you could just go get a minimum wage job, making coffee or something like that. I mean, that's probably the safest job, but you never took any risks. So you're not going to make any money doing it. Right.
Absolutely.
So I think it comes back to goals, and it comes back to, are you willing to invest in this like a real business so that you can build a team around yourself and not necessarily just have a job, like truly build a business that can give you that time freedom back.
I love that. Folks, there's no lack of jobs out there. I don't think I've gone to a Starbucks in any state that is not hiring right now. So if you want the easy path, go be a barista making your frappuccinos or whatever they make over there, and, just do that. But if you want to really change your financial future, your family's financial future, create the legacy, like so many of the people that we're talking about here, you're going to have to do some hard shit. Sorry to tell you the truth, but like, the truth hurts. Get off your ass and go do the hard things that all of us have had to do to realize this. And I'll tell you, like, the journey isn't this pretty journey. It's riddled with all sorts of traps, all sorts of things you're going to fall over. And I'm just painting a picture, but every step of this journey is difficult. I'm not trying to steer you away from it, but I'm trying to prepare you that this isn't an easy path, but it is one that lands to unbelievable financial success. And Mike, I want to talk a little bit about just where we're at right now. I'm in the money space, ex-Wall Street guy. And, I teach money today. I teach people the truth about money and where it all is and how to get it. But the thing I think a lot of people are failing to realize, because we've been in a pretty long-term bull market, one of the longest in history. Many of the people that we're speaking to through this episode right now don't even remember 2008, or they were just a child and they remember maybe their parents talking about it, but they don't really understand it. We had a glimpse of what a recessionary period could have been and during the pandemic, but it was just a V. It just bounced and went straight up because the government printed $5 trillion. Just remember that word, printed $5 trillion. There's a price that we're going to pay for that soon. And where we're going now, with just this week, there was some announcements that most people don't understand, but me being the ex-Wall Street guy, it's just like, oh my God, the 2 and the 10-year treasury bonds inverted and the 5 and the 30-year treasury bonds inverted Monday. Paint a picture for everybody. We go back in history 40 years, every time except for one in a 40-year period that this event has happened with these inverted yield curves resulted in a recession. So I think it's imminent to talk about this recession that's coming, this storm that's coming, and what's going to happen for all of the people that in your masterminds and everything else, because there's really 2 different sides to what's going to happen. Either people are going to prepare and get ready for this, this pending storm that's going to hit us, or they're just going to keep going and they're going to bury their head in the sand and say, oh, no, the government will just print more money. Oh, no, there's too much demand for houses. There's no way real estate's going to go down. That scares me because they're wrong. And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, man, I wish I had a crystal ball. I used to talk to some really smart people about this. And we go back like 8 years ago and we thought, man, I don't know how much more of this we can take without seeing a downturn. And lo and behold, here we are 8 years later. We're probably finally on the cusp of something, but I thought we were on the cusp of something, 6 or 8 years ago. So I don't know. I really don't know, but I do think a couple things. Real estate is typically pretty resilient for getting through an inflationary period, right? You want to have hard assets or know what you don't want to be in cash for sure, right? The dollar's being destroyed. I think I think the inflation rates that they're telling us are way, way less than the reality, right? So I think inflation is much heavier. And so I think, just being in physical assets is a good thing. That's what I believe. So I do believe that in a downturn market, those are the best times for real estate investors because a lot of the competition goes away. A lot of those hobbyists we talked about a few minutes ago, they go away. There's a little bit of a credit crunch, right? Lenders start to pull back. So for those that are well capitalized, have relationships with private lenders that are a little more flexible and aren't necessarily looking at the yield curves and stuff as actively as the national hard money lenders that are reselling loans like the moment they get it done and things like that, they're a little more flexible. So having those relationships, but I think you're right. Have some dry powder, be prepared to pounce, maybe pull back a little bit right now. Certainly pull back on stuff that is like you have these risk levers, right? Like don't go do a ripping it down to the studs heavy rehab if you don't have to. Like try to do more wholetailing or even wholesaling or lighter rehabs. I mean, the retail market is still pretty hot right now, but there will be a shift at some point, right? So I think, try to mitigate risk, try to build up some dry powder, whether it's your own capital or relationships with capital, and be prepared for opportunities. Because the great thing about real estate investing is there are opportunities in every market. And I think for those that are newer, and I talked about this recently with somebody else, is that, if you've been around for a while, you have additional tools in your tool bag, whether it's different exit strategies. Here's what I'm going to do in an up market. Here's what I'm going to do in a down market. And for a lot of newer folks, if anybody that's gotten in really in the last, probably 8 or 10 years, this is the only market, right? So you've only had to have one tool, and the retail market's on fire right now. Like there are folks that are overpaying for houses and they just get lucky because by the time they get the house turned around, it's increased in value another 10%. And so maybe otherwise they would have lost money or broken even, but the market kind of propped them up, right? So that type of stuff won't be around. In the last downturn, there were people that the house values were increasing faster than the rate of their hard money loan. So they would literally sit on properties and just pay that high interest, knowing that the values are going to be higher. Like that, that's what brings people down ultimately, is that thinking that that's going to continue.